Well, I'm finally back with my third video. It's only been a bit over half a year since my last one. A lot has happened in the meantime. I'll try and keep it chronological. Not sure I'll succeed, but... Last video was just before I had my surgery. Now that's been all done. It's gone quite well. At least they're gone. This is all quite flat now. So, insofar, that's a success. Now, there were some parts that I hadn't quite anticipated. One of the things was that the swelling had gone down quite a bit, not as in gone, but really down towards my lower rib cage. Now, usually you have to wear a compression band, which is this one, but because the swelling had quite gone out of reach of that, I got this one instead. This one apparently is usually used for stomach surgery, but this covered both my boobs and my lower rib cage. So I had to wear that for a week, after which I had to go to the other one. Now, what I hadn't quite expected was that I wasn't allowed to put them on myself. Now, you do have to put quite some force on those things in order to get the compression you need, and you're not allowed to, use your arms, basically, for anything other than picking up some drink. Now, that was fine for the first 2 weeks, as I spent that time with my mom and my stepfather, but after that I went home to recover over there. And then I needed my friends to come over about 2 or 3 times a week so that I could take a shower and they could put it back on. Luckily, I have great friends, so that in the end worked out, but it was a bit of a planning nightmare. But I'm really grateful to them, really. Couldn't have done it without them. Now, another thing that I hadn't quite anticipated was something like getting up. This can be out of bed or out of a lazy chair. Now, usually, when you get up, you use your arms, but you're not allowed to do that. Now, in terms of getting out of bed, what was advised to me, and which eventually worked, was rolling onto my side, swinging my legs out of bed, and working myself up with a minimal use of my arms. But there was also this chair at my mother's place, which I just couldn't get out of. At least the first week or so. So I actually needed my mother to put her hands in my back to lift me up, and then I could get up using my legs. Mainly because I couldn't use my abdomen muscles because of that swelling. Now luckily, eventually I figured out how to get on my side in the chair and use my legs that way to get up. But it was a bit of a struggle. A funny struggle, but a struggle nonetheless. I also hadn't quite anticipated how far I couldn't lift my arms. Now, I already knew that you're not allowed to go above, like going straight. But I couldn't go anywhere past this, basically. So things like washing your hair or brushing it, that's quite difficult. So the first time my mother actually helped me shower, which is a little bit awkward at my age, but I'm glad she did, because I couldn't really do much myself. Now, I had these stitching bands at the outside, which are like band-aids. They had to kind of just fall off. They didn't really, probably because they were kept in place because of the compression vest. So the doctor took those off when I came for the checkup after 6 weeks. After that, the healing went quite fast because before that time I had 2 open spots, which were also a bit moist. Wasn't any color, wasn't any smell, so I wasn't really afraid that it was infected or anything, but it looked kind of bad. Apparently they just needed a bit of air, because when I finally got rid of the compression vest, I could just walk around giving it a bit of air, and it was closed within a day. So that went actually quite well. I'm completely recovered now. I can pretty much do anything again. So that's that. Now, another thing is hormones. As I've mentioned before, I used a gel before. It's this stuff. I've got some questions about this from friends because some people apparently think like you have to bathe in it or anything. You don't. So the usual amount you have to take is about 2 pumps. So one of them would be this. This is all is 1 pump basically. And you have to rub that on your shoulders and on your upper chest. After which you have to clean your hands properly because you don't want to rub this stuff up to anyone else, basically. It actually smells kind of pleasant. It's not all bad. But you do have to be careful with showering or anything like that, bodily contact. It's a big no, actually. But it also didn't quite work for me. So when you start this whole process, you get a hormone check every 3 months. Now, when I started this stuff, I got the regular 2 pumps a day. And my first checkup, my testosterone level was 23.6. Now, ideally, you are between 12 and 25. So in that respect, it's fine, but it's a bit high. So I was advised to go back to 1.5 pump, and it plummeted. It went to 4.2. Way too low. So we went back to 2, and I kind of expected that it would go really high again. It didn't. It went to 7.33. Still below that 12. So then we upped it to 2.5, and it went to 9.14. Then we decided to do one day 2 pumps, another day 3 pumps. It went back to 7.56. After which we went to 3 pumps, and I ended up at 11.8, just short of that 12. So apparently it's just not absorbed by my skin the way it should. So I got frustrated and decided, you know what, I'm done with this. I hadn't all that much space left where I could put it. So I just made the decision to go for a different one. This is Cystanon, which is injection, basically. Let's get it out. This is what I basically have to put inside my body. So it's kind of a thick liquid, really. It's really, well, syrupy. So I have to use a quite thick needle to get it into the syringe. And first time the doctor's assistant did it, which went quite well. Second time after 3 weeks, because I have to do this every 3 weeks. I did most of it myself, and she supervised and intervened wherever necessary. And the third time I had to do it myself. And after that I could do it myself at home. It didn't quite went well when I did it at home. Mainly because I got quite a sore spot for weeks after, which was also kind of hard. It became a ball. And that lasted for about 4 to 5 weeks. So I went back to the assistant, and basically what I did was I injected it too fast. I did it somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds, and you have to take at least 20 seconds to put that in because it is such a thick fluid and your muscles really have to try and absorb it. I also went to a slightly smaller needle for injection. I first got this one, now I've got a slightly smaller one. And ever since that time, it actually went quite well. And as soon as I started those injections, changes started to happen. One of which I hope is audible. My voice has gone down, finally. Has taken quite a while. Another thing that changed was I don't have my period anymore. Basically from the first injection, no more periods, which is absolutely brilliant. Just that makes it totally worth it. And what I hadn't quite noticed was that those periods literally made me sick. I got flu-like symptoms, I would really feel ill about once a month. 1 month was worse than the other, but there were times where I just fell ill and had to stay at home for 2 or 3 days. Ever since I started the injections, I haven't been ill, which is quite a thing for me because I can't really remember when I went half a year without getting ill. I think it's been about a decade. So that's really, really good. I've also got a little bit of facial hair that's starting to come through. So that's also new. I do have to shave now because it looks like a mess. There's a little bit on the left side, there's just a little bit on the right side, and that's about it. So I look like a tramp when it's growing out. So those are pretty much all the changes. Another thing that increased was acne, or zits. I already had them a little bit when I started with a gel, but it increased dramatically. So I went to my doctor, who also agreed that it was quite extreme. Now, usually in treating acne, they use the female hormone, which isn't really an option for me. So I was sent to the dermatologist, and she gave me a long-lasting antibiotics. I didn't quite realize that acne was actually caused by bacteria, but there you go. The more you know. So I have to use this for 60 days. I'm now a bit over 3 weeks. Not really noticing a lot of change yet. But, I mean, it did say that it could last a couple of weeks before it would kick in. So I'm hoping that will do something. Otherwise, we'll have to go to something apparently more extreme. But we'll see about that. I've got my checkup in another 3 weeks, I believe. So, we'll see. Now, to wrap it up again. Reading another story. Just to, my mother didn't quite understand with the previous video why I was reading part of a story. It is still my intention to eventually get all of these storytelling bits and put them all together, and hopefully you can hear and see me change during the story of Hansel and Gretel. So let's see the last line of last time. Hansel, however, had not been looking back at the cat, but had been constantly throwing one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket on the road. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire, that you may not be cold." Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together as high as a little hill. The brushwood was lighted, and when the flames were burning very high, the woman said, "Now, children, lay yourself down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate a little piece of bread. And as they heard the strokes of the wood axe, they believed that their father was near. It was not, however, an axe. It was a branch which he had fastened to a withered tree, which the wind was blowing backwards and forwards. And as they had been sitting such a long time, their eyes shut with fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When at last they woke, it was already dark night. Gretel began to cry, and said, "How are we to get out of the forest now?" But Hansel comforted her and said, "Just wait a little, until the moon has risen, and we will soon find the way." And when the full moon had risen, Hansel took his little sister by the hand, and followed the pebbles which shone like newly coined silver pieces, and showed them the way. They walked the whole night long, and by break of day came once more to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest? We thought you were never going to come back at all." The father, however, rejoiced, for it had cut him to the heart to leave them behind alone. Not long afterwards, there was once more great scarcity in all parts, and the children heard their mother saying at night to their father, "Everything is eaten again. We have 1/2 loaf left, and after that there is an end. The children must go. We will take them farther into the wood, so that they will not find their way out again. There is no other means of saving ourselves." The man's heart was heavy, and he thought, "It would be better for thee to share the last mouthful with thy children." The woman, however, would listen to nothing, and he had to say, but scolded and reproached him. "He who says A must say B." Likewise, and as he had yielded the first time, he had to do so a second time also. The children were, however, still awake, and had heard the conversation. When the old folks were asleep, Hansel again got up and wanted to go out and pick up pebbles as he had done before. But the woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted his little sister and said, "Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly. The good God will help us." So, that's it for this time. Not sure how long it will take me to get to the next video, but we'll see. Hopefully, till soon.